Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with special guest Dean McMurray. Today is, today is Wednesday, and this is your daily dose of happy. And we are so happy you decided to join us today. And Dean, you heard the hesitation there. I'm trying out a new intro, and I just flubbed it. And we were talking before the show about how when you flub it, the flubs are almost as good as the real thing. So we're going to go with that was almost as good as the real thing.
Right. Well, thanks for having me back, Walt. It's really an honor not only to be asked, but be back on your show. And I'm loving the new intro.
Well, I'm doing the new intro because, as I told you before the show, and listeners know about this, we are within a few weeks of getting our show onto local cable access television.
And that's so
and
cool.
The person who is the station manager, I gave her a sample show, one of the shows that I did with Cindie Chavez, who is, by the way, people who are wondering, she's out sick today, not feeling well. So that's why Dean is sitting in. But we did this introductory version for the cable channel, and the person who runs the station got back to me and said, "Yeah, let's see if we can work something out." By the way, are your shows? Do they have to be on the air at a certain time? I asked, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, because you always date it at the top." And it hadn't occurred to me that could be an issue, because if they're running the shows on a different date, that could be rather confusing. So after years and years of doing the other intro, I think it's time I switch the intro up. So
switch it up, some new energy coming in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a little time because I had it written out and I still flubbed it. So it's going to take
That's
some
all
practice.
right. That's all right. We were talking too before we went live about, I think I was just asking you the curiosity of how long you've been doing the show and kind of the beginnings of things, right?
Right.
And to get through, but what we perceive, what it needs to be like constructed in our mind, and then the reality of what it actually shows up to be like. So we talk about the realism. I think you brought up the analogy of, reality TV is still scripted at some level. And
yes.
Yeah, but stuff like this is just so real and raw. And where you can't you can't script out. I mean, it's like
no self-respecting producer would ever script it out this way anyway. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Well, you're losing such great content if you do, I believe. And really, I mean, I think that you would get away from the true nature of things if you start doing that, because the energy is just, I call it just kind of wonky, right? It's off.
I agree.
You feel it inauthentic. Yep. It's like, boy, they sound like a robot. They're just very in a box, instead of, hey, it was a really fun. They were able to do this, and it just kind of gets boring, right?
I kind of thought from the beginning, because I asked myself 8 years ago when I first started doing the show, how do I want this show to go? And at first it was me and Louise doing it together, and she kind of lost interest after a couple episodes. And then a few months later, my brother and sister-in-law came on, and my sister-in-law actually did some shows with me for a while. And then she had other things she needed to do. And then my friend Joel Elston, I was telling you about him, he came on and did it for quite a few years with me. But during all that time of just kind of feeling out how it's all going to go, I kept asking myself, how do I want this show to be? What do I want it to be like? And one of the first answers I came to, took me about 2 years to get there, but it was, well, I want it to be a happy show. I want it to be a show that feels good. And that's where your Daily Dose of Happy ultimately came from.
Nice.
And then the other thing that I really wanted, I wanted it to be like, my co-host and I were sitting at a table in a restaurant chatting, and listeners got to listen in over our shoulders. I wanted to have that kind of feel, but without the clanking sounds of the silverware in the
kitchen. Right. And the mouthfuls of whatever you're eating.
Right, exactly.
How many of those conversations have we actually all overheard, like somebody talking about their recent colonoscopy or something?
Well, yeah.
Next door. It's
like, you can't rule those out here, I'm saying, but
oh yeah, but
mostly no, we focus on the Daily Dose of Happy. We focus on keeping it light and fun. I love doing the shows on Thursdays and yesterday also, because Dan and Alex, who do the Thursday show with me, sat in on the Tuesday show because David Strickle, who does the Tuesday show, couldn't do that show. And when I do a show with Dan and Alex, I basically, it's kind of like what I told you before the show, only a little bit different. It's like with Joel, I would say one thing and he'd be gone for 20 minutes talking about it. With Dan and Alex, it's a funny thing. I'll bring up a topic. We'll kill the topic in about 20 seconds. And then it's just the Dan and Alex show going crazy with every single funny thing they can think of to say. And me trying to keep up, you know?
Right, right. Well,
So,
everything that I've heard you talk about, Walt, is really about creating a community, right? So
yeah.
in an environment, a network of not only your great guests and co-hosts, but really your listeners out there, and creating an
Oh, totally.
that geodescent pattern of that connection.
Yeah.
And
It
I just
works
love
too.
that you're creating a community.
I mean, we get so much email and messages through the LOA Today app. That was a big breakthrough, getting that app out
I
there.
bet.
And yeah, the feedback we get. I mean, first of all, we get people sending in questions. By the way, speaking of which, I should do a little promo. For those of you who have the LOA Today app, thank you for downloading and using it. And use the app to send your questions in, because you can send a question to any of my co-hosts and we'll address it on the next show that they're on. But also make sure you're sharing the app with others so that they're able to do the same thing. And it actually makes it pretty easy to contact us. But Dean, the contacts that we get, I mean, every once in a while there's somebody you
Right.
can't satisfy, but for the most part, first of all, we have fabulous listeners, people who are advanced conscious creators. And I love that fact.
That's so awesome.
I think a lot of them are better at it than I am, to be perfectly blunt. And the messages they write of support and appreciation are just off the scale. I
Isn't
mean,
that
how often do we
beautiful?
talk about the importance of gratitude and appreciating?
Right.
Our listeners are the most appreciative listeners I have ever heard of in my
Oh,
life. So
that's
yeah, we
so
have a
awesome.
fabulous community, and that's as much a testament to them as it is to me and my team.
Well, what was interesting is that one of the things, that the overwhelming piece that made me reach out and connect with you, Walt, is the overall vibe of your show. You know, although I'm a newcomer,
You're the
obviously
newbie.
connect. Yeah, I'm the newbie, but I really feel into, obviously, the energy piece of shows, but I just felt it. It had the good vibe, right? The happy vibe. It just, and I was like, this just feels good. And I'm glad to hear that the response is great, because when you're putting out that, this is kind of like the karmic energy, right? When you're
Hmm.
putting out good vibes, good things will come back, and you're going to
They do.
connect to great people, and they're going to be attracted to the same. So it's no wonder that you got great folks when you're putting out great vibes. Of course, there's
Well,
always going
also,
to be ones or twos, but
yeah, there are a few.
that don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
you can't
um,
you can't satisfy everybody. There's no way to do
no,
that.
you can't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Everybody needs love. So
But you were asking about when I went to 5 days a week. You asked me before the show,
yeah,
why did I do that? And it was
yeah,
because I just loved it so much. I couldn't get
that's so
enough of it
awesome.
once a week. So at that time, that was, let's see, that was November of 2016, 2017. I can't remember which year. But at that point, I said, okay, well, I need a lot more co-hosts because Joel can't do it with me
Right.
5 days a week. So I need somebody else. And so it was a Sunday, and I remember thinking, well, I'll just go find some life coaches. Life coaches are usually into this stuff, you know. So I'll find
Right.
some life coaches, and I found like a half a dozen of them and sent them emails. And you know what? Three of them wrote back saying, you know what's happening today? I was thinking I should really get into doing a podcast, and your email came through. And all three of them became co-hosts, Cindy
Oh, that's
Chavez,
so
Tom
awesome.
Wells, and Wendy Dillard. And it was just an amazing thing. Cindy's still
That's
with
so
me after all these
that
years.
that's
It's like,
so cool.
yeah, so I mean, it's like another proof of law of attraction really does work,
Right.
you
It
know?
does. It truly does. And a lot of people don't get that. But I'm so curious, Walt, like, did you have a career in radio or anything before you started podcasting? Or is it something that you're like, I want
Not
to
really a
express this with
career.
everybody?
I mean, when I was in college, I did college radio,
Hmm.
which is, this was back in the late 1970s. And anyone who was
Hmm.
in school at that point knows that college radio at that point was mainly get out an album, play it, and then say, a minute of things and then put another album on. So there wasn't a
Hmm.
whole lot of mic work, but I did enjoy the part that I did.
Sure.
And, sometimes I do mixes and so forth so I could say more just to have
Sure.
more airtime, right?
Sure.
But no, I never pursued a career in radio. I think because I just heard you never got any good money that way, and I figured, well, I've got to be able to earn a living, But yeah, I've had that thought. I've wondered to myself, what would have happened if I had gone down that path? And I don't know.
Mhm.
But I
Right.
did have a little bit of experience, and they did tell
Right.
me, well, first of all, I got good input on my voice. People were telling me,
Mm.
okay, you got a good radio voice. I said, oh, okay, good. All right, well, that's a good start. Now, if I had,
Did you
some
say,
talent.
what are you saying about my face? No, you have a great voice for radio. What are you saying about my
Well,
face?
the thing about radio is they don't care about your face.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's like
Right.
all they
They
care about
don't.
is the
They're
voice.
listening to your voice. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. The old adage of or I have a face for radio.
That's right.
So yeah. No,
Exactly.
radio is just it's own animal, right? So all the, you know, it's kind of an interesting genre because a lot of people in the podcasting world are like you're streaming live now. Um, as far as blunders and bleeps and whatever, there's not a lot of really second thoughts to it. But in live radio, it's always worried about, oh, dead air, or hey, in the podcast world, it's like whatever. It's like, it's
Well, I've
the
always been
sponsors,
cognizant of that. I've been aware
right?
of I don't
Obviously,
want,
but
I don't want to have the dead space. And it
right.
actually helped me to develop as a conscious creator
Mm,
because there are times where you had a topic in mind. Sometimes we don't. Today we just start kind of winging
right,
it. But there are
right.
times
Yeah.
where you have a topic in mind and then the topic is done after 10 minutes. And okay, now what do I do?
Now, what do you
Right.
do? Right.
And sometimes I'm blessed with a co-host like Joel who I could say one thing and he's done for the next 20 minutes and I might be able to
Right.
get something in edgewise, but that's not always the case with everybody, so
Hmm.
sometimes you're going to get that moment where, okay, what comes next? And I don't remember exactly what the impetus was behind it, but at one point, talking to one of my co-hosts after a podcast episode, I think it was Wendy, she was suggesting to me, just use it as an opportunity to connect within and see what comes out.
Mm,
And I have never been one who's been really great at getting verbal communication or, word communication going on. I could occasionally get an image. I can occasionally get
sure.
a feeling, but not much more than that. So that was kind of terrifying, to be perfectly honest. But I decided to try it. And the way I ended up doing it was if it came to a point where I knew I didn't have anything to say,
Right.
I would come out with I had like 2 or 3 phrases I would use. Well, that makes me think of, or,
Mm,
um, what you say there kinda leads me to think about something else, and it is, and in the course of saying those words, then I just open my mouth and see if anything comes out. And the
mm.
astonishing thing was, more often than not, something came out.
There you go.
And it as it was coming out, it felt to me hesitant and like, I have no idea where this is going. And am I using
Right.
complete sentences? And then I'd listen to myself afterward and I'd say, that actually made sense. How did I do that?
Feel like you're talking in circles and rambling. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
And,
actually have
but,
gotten better at it. So I kind of think maybe it's my way to learn how to do that interconnection thing, to
and
have that
sometimes
communication going.
doing what could be considered conscious channeling,
In a sense, yeah.
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 Have you ever done a speech or something and been up there and said, when you get done, you're like, I don't even know what I just said? And everybody is like, oh my God, that was so great. And it's like, really? Yeah, okay, thanks. And I don't know, just nod and just bye-bye.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and
I
trusting.
haven't had a total blank on a speech,
Sure.
but I have given talks where I had it pretty well mapped out, and
Mhm.
I would get to the middle of the talk and I couldn't remember what came next.
Sure.
So I think I actually had practice doing this channeling thing or whatever it is earlier on, but yeah, they never complained and they always thought it was a really great speech. And I'm thinking, why am I not getting paid to do this?
Right. Right. I remember one time I was doing a gallery at a psychic gallery, at a casino, and I was so nervous. It was my biggest event.
Wait a
And
minute, I gotta interrupt you there. A psychic gallery at a casino.
yeah, so you think about like,
I mean, if you're playing like poker or blackjack, I would think the other players are freaking out over the idea that there's a psychic at
this,
the table.
well, this was actually, I'll preface it by saying it was part of a paranormal convention.
Oh, okay.
And I was the featured medium to give a mediumship gallery. So you think of a public gathering, about 400 or 500 folks, and then you get up there and give evidential
Oh, okay.
proof that
So you weren't actually at the tables, and
I
so everybody
wasn't
could
a
relax.
hit me again, and then
Yeah,
it's like your
right.
grandma's here. It's like I was, it's like she
Maybe
wants
needs
you
a
to
new
bet
pair of
on what,
shoes.
she wants you to bet on red 14.
Yeah, right.
It's like a gambling. Maybe we can make that a thing. I don't know. There were laws.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Somebody's
I mean,
like, "Hey, put me down for the lotto." So
exactly.
yeah.
You actually get a stream of people following you over to the roulette table, and whatever you bet, they
Right.
bet the same thing.
They'd be like, "I wonder how much money." Keep tabs on him. See how much money he loses or wins. That's why I don't do the gambling part. So I'm not all that great at it. So,
It's
but
funny though. I had a co-host fairly early on. He was about my fourth one, I think it was. His name was David Bartke. He was only with me for a few months, but he was first of all, he was very um, he had a very strict approach to law of attraction. He always presented it the same way. He always addressed the same kinds of topics, which is probably why he was only here for 3 or 4 months. But he also was really good at applying it in his life, and he could do it in the casino as well. Now his thing was to go play the machines, which any mathematician will tell you is
Sure.
your worst thing to do,
Right.
because the odds are so heavily against you.
Right.
He would win almost every time, and he would
Wow.
do it using intuition and conscious creation, just
Sure.
over and over again. One of the best stories he told me, I don't know these machines, but apparently one of the things that can happen is you can get free spins,
Okay.
on a one-arm bandit spins.
Sure.
These are electronic machines, but it's the same concept.
Right.
And he was in a groove, and he was actually making money, and then he won 500 free spins. And he
Holy
just sat there
cow.
pushing the button, free spin, and money's coming out and going out and going.
Jeez, I need to hang out with that guy.
I mean, David was
Oh,
amazing. He was truly an amazing creator.
that is
Yeah.
so awesome.
He also had a
That's
really great story about how he had moved to Manhattan, and he saw what it's like to try to get an apartment there. If you know anything about New York City, rents in New York are horrific and very difficult to get. And what you can get for the money is usually pretty meager. And he came from a family that, had pretty nice places, and he didn't want to just kind of settle for that. So he said, I'm going to attract something better. I'm going to attract a really nice apartment. It's going to be in New York. It's going to be on Central Park West, right near the gate to Central Park. And it's going to be at a rent that I can afford. And what he could afford wasn't a lot. But somehow it was all going to come together. And he was so confident about it. He believed in it so completely, it actually did happen. And the way it happened was, it was one of those serendipitous, one synchronicity after another.
Isn't that so
and,
cool?
And it all just kind of fell into place perfectly, exactly the way he dreamed it. And he was so good at that stuff.
That stuff just blows me away. I mean, obviously it's really cool when it happens to you, but I love it when it happens to anybody.
Oh yeah.
And you
sure.
hear about it. But yeah, it's so crazy. And a lot of people like don't get it. And it's interesting because I had a similar situation going back about 10 years, about 9-10 years, when shortly after my spiritual awakening, right? On that Friday show, I shared about my journey or a little bit about it. But the thing that I didn't talk about was when I retired and I was starting to do this full time, being a psychic medium. There's a period when you get out of the military that they stop your because I was being, retired. So they were going to pay me per month. But there's about a month that you don't get paid because the military Uncle Sam wants to make sure you don't have any debts to the government. And so there's a month gap, and then you
holding on to it.
pay all that.
Yeah.
Well, about the time that I retired and they stopped my pay, the government at that time was we were in a they were in a shutdown basically, and they stopped all military and government funding
Ah,
for a short period of time. Oh, by the way, my wife at the time um, had to leave work because of health reasons,
oh God.
and so there was no money coming in, and we had
Right.
a couple little kids. And so I was freaking out, and I was like, do I need to run down and get a job? I don't care, flipping burgers. Do I need, to,
Something just to get
yeah,
through.
something to get by,
Yeah.
is until we get going, what do we need to do? And we both clearly, my wife does energy work as well, um, got very clearly that we were not to do that. And we
Okay.
were like, kind of looking at the universe, going,
Yeah.
in the bank account, like, and but clearly it was like, don't worry, it's all going to come in. And it was so crazy, Walt, because you talk about manifesting stuff. For example, during that period, there was a time where a friend of ours said, hey, do you mind if I come over and use your printer to
Mm,
print off a job resume? And I said, well, that's not a problem. However, we're out of ink. Just have about, couldn't afford ink, to be quite honest.
sure.
And he showed up actually late, and he goes, it was so weird. He was like kind of looking around like he didn't know what the hell he was doing there at our house. And he goes, I'm going to go home, but here's like, I don't know if he was in a trance or what, but he was like, I don't need to use it. But just keep the ink. Like, the ink manifested itself. Payment, like we overpaid in insurance or something, and checks would come in from, like insurance or other things that evidently we overpaid. And
Mhm.
it was just so crazy. And it was like, wow, we just completely amazed. And of course, now I will preface this by saying that we just didn't sit there and just wish everything. We had to
Right.
take active steps into doing things. We had to reach out to, hey, let's start thinking of ideas and, maybe events or whatever, but start thinking in a business mindset. But at the same time, the universe was kind of walking towards us as we were walking towards,
Right.
and I think that's one of the things that people, a misconception,
Hmm.
that you can just sit and, in a sense, just sit with your hand out and expect it to be delivered without any action on your part.
Well, it's
Have you
certainly
found?
a hell of a lot easier with the action piece. I think it
Right,
actually is
right,
possible, but you got to have a level of certainty that far exceeds what most people can
right,
muster in order to have it just kind of appear. That's really pushing it for most people. Because I mean, if you could
right.
really believe that, yeah, sure, it could happen. But
Sure,
I don't know
sure.
anyone who can do that.
Right.
I don't know who has
Well,
that level of belief. I certainly don't. I mean, my level is a lot better than it used to be, but I mean,
right.
I just know going into it. No, I'm not even going to try to do that. I'm going to do an
Right.
action step of some kind, inspired
Right.
by what it is I'm trying to
Right.
do. Not going to just kind of sit there and wait because I could be waiting a long time, knowing
Right.
me.
Well, the thing is though, is what I found personally is I'm able to get to those visions or those goals a lot quicker if I take actionable steps, or if I at least take a few
Yes.
steps through the doorway. And it could be in a completely different scope or direction, but at least the universe knows that I'm moving forward instead of, at least for me personally. Now, some
Well,
other people would be like, Dean, hey, stuff was showing up.
and that does happen. I know
Yes,
people
it
who
does.
I know people it happens with. Dan McGain is a great example of that. But the beauty, and I think this is kind of what gets overlooked with what you're talking about.
Hmm.
The beauty of taking the action steps is that when you're taking action steps, unless you're really tripping yourself up, you're in a
Right.
good vibe
Yeah.
because you're doing this because you really want this thing to happen. You
Right.
you want to be a part of it, and you don't necessarily know what to do. You don't necessarily
Right.
know how it's going to play out. You just know you have to take some kind of a step, and the universe will just kind of guide you. And you just kind of follow the signs, so to speak. But just doing that
Right.
feels a little bit better than what it felt before you did it. And that makes a difference. It makes a huge difference.
Oh, it does. It does. One of my favorite books, when talking about law of attraction, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill. Yeah.
Oh, love it. When I love in the part of the book where he talks about back before he wrote the book, right?
Hmm.
And he was trying, I think was trying to get to New York
Hmm.
to pitch the idea of the book. And
Right.
it was during the Depression and he didn't have a penny to his name.
Right.
And he walked around that schoolhouse about a bazillion times to try to figure out what he's going to do. And then finally, it just, hey, you need to go ask your brother-in-law for the money and a car, whatever, and get there. And then, hey, don't get the cheap room. Treat yourself, get a good room, because then you're going to project yourself better.
Hmm.
And all the things that he did based off his intuition or what he was getting from the universe, right?
Yeah.
And by the time he left New York, he had the deal, he had the money to pay. However, I think he was there over a week or whatever, but he had all this money and he got it back tenfold. And I
In
just
fact, if I remember correctly, that's what led to the trip to Pittsburgh where he met with Carnegie.
right. It was all serendipitous. One door
Right.
opened the other, and
Yep.
I was completely blown away. And that's still remains one of my top favorite books about law of attraction,
Hmm.
listening to your intuition, because here he was back in an era that wasn't really accepted widely, right? That was, they're very quiet. And here he's doing this, and he's listening. And
That was actually my frustration with the book, believe it or not. The fact that he was living in that period of time where he really couldn't be direct. So he was so
mm,
indirect that I didn't understand what he was talking about half the time.
oh,
I
sure.
did. I mean, there were times he would say, "If you understand this, you know what I'm saying here." And I'd say, "I don't understand. What the hell are you saying? I don't get it."
You
So
don't get it till you get it. Yeah.
literally for years, I was just frustrated with Think and Grow Rich because I felt cheated.
Mm,
Just tell me what it is, Napoleon. Come on. But
sure,
no,
sure.
he lived in a time where if he had done that, I think his publishers were right about that. If
Right.
he had been more specific and more direct about it, he probably would have been ridden out of town on a rail at that point in time.
Right. Well, and think back to it. That book, now correct me if I'm wrong, the book was not published, or the full book was not published until after his passing. There was something that wasn't passed or published until
I don't know that part.
there was something that I think it was the full manuscript or something, but it was pretty controversial for the time anyways. And it made a
Very much.
huge impact into a lot of people's lives. But at the same time, it was he was ahead of his time
Oh,
for,
no doubt about it.
and
I mean, there were other people who were contemporaries of his.
mhm,
Florence Shin comes to mind. She actually wrote a few years before he did, and Wallace Wattles, of course, who was the inspiration for The Secret, and a
sure.
few others. But yeah, it was pretty rare. And if you were
Right.
in that camp, I mean, the concept of what they call New Thought started in the late 19th century, but it was on the same level as Ouija boards. I mean, it
Mm,
was not respected at all. It was
right.
often considered to be the devil's work. It
Right.
was, it had a very bad rep. So it's almost amazing it actually caught on at all, to be perfectly
Right.
honest.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too, because that goes into his other book. I think it was called Outwitting the Devil.
Yeah, that sounds
Yep.
familiar. I never read it, but
Yeah. So where basically Napoleon Hill, if the thought of basically it goes with a thought that we have within us, basically the devil in a
mhm.
sense, if you think of it that way. And the devil being anything that keeps us in a state of accomplishing what we want through hypnotic rhythm, I think he uses the term, but
Oh, okay.
basically procrastination. And
Hmm.
basically what those things are, like money, sex, booze, all these different things that were of the time. Now, you can add social media and other things, electronics, but anything you devote your time to keep yourself from doing something that you truly should be doing to live your greatest potential, right? Or what you want to do.
It just
And
occurred to me there's somebody else too from that same era who found a way to get the message out without offending the powers that be, and that's Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard did his teaching from the 1930s through the 1960s, so he was right in the midst of all that in the early part of
okay.
his career. And he basically framed it in terms of Christianity and said, well, this is based on the Bible. It's just what you've been taught in the Bible is inaccurate. Here's what the Bible really means. And so he basically,
Ooh,
took their stuff and turned it into this stuff
right.
and got
Now
away
I
with
can
it
only,
because he
I,
actually gave his talks in a chapel that was controlled by the Catholic Church in New York City.
oh, wow.
I mean, just like, wow. So
Right.
that was clever work right there.
Right.
That was
Right.
really clever.
But could you imagine being a fly in the wall, like rocking just the bolt there, saying like, this is all in the Bible, but it's all been done wrong. It's like, what are you saying? And it's like, boy, that's a huge organization to, especially back then where things
Especially
were
then.
more staunch, right? It's
Yeah.
less open-mindedness. I think is so
I mean, it's
fascinating.
truly amazing. And literally, I mean, he turned all of basic Christian teaching on its ear. I mean,
Wow.
for him, God and Jesus were the equivalent of consciousness.
Wow.
And he even would say that at times, X equals Y. They are the same thing, And
Right.
Cindie Chavez and I actually did most of his books page by page, discussing the chapters and so forth. And we developed what we call the Neville decoder ring, which is where
Mm,
you take all this metaphors and you say, okay, this is what he really means when he says that. This is what he's really talking about, because otherwise you can get lost really quick.
sure. Sure.
And I'm sure that was by design because of the restraints that he was working within. But my God, the things that he was teaching were sacrilege. They were heresy.
Right.
I mean, they really were.
To
If
actually,
some
and
top
that's,
level bishop got a hold of it.
well, that's why I was like really surprised when you said he was actually talking about this stuff in like churches.
Oh yeah.
And,
Yeah, it was a particular chapel that he gave his talks in particular. I mean, he would travel the country too. And there were
right.
some great stories that came out of that.
Those
Um,
guys were ahead of their time, I tell
they
you.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really
That's
were.
so awesome. That's so cool when,
And it's also cool. I mean, I mentioned Florence Scovel-Shinn. I'm glad that there's at least one woman in there. And she
right.
was way ahead of her time. I don't know if you've read her stuff, but
I haven't.
she was one of the early ones. She was earlier than both Neville and
Okay.
Napoleon. Yeah.
That's
Really,
very
really
cool.
interesting.
And I'm sure there's more. We just haven't heard of them, right?
I know of a famous one,
Okay.
the author of the Sherlock Holmes stories, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Really?
He was into this stuff. Yeah.
Wow. I did
Yeah.
not
I
know
never
that.
saw anything that said anything similar to law of attraction per se,
Sure.
but he was very much into alternative spiritualism and so forth in a big, big way. Yeah.
Really? That's
Yeah. You never
fascinating.
hear that side of him.
No, you don't. You don't. I almost makes me want to go back and open up like an old Sherlock Holmes or something to see if there's any smatterings of it in his work. It's like I'm trying to think.
Little bits. I mean, I know
You're
the
right.
stories really well. There's like 50, 56 stories, I think it is. And
Yeah.
I know them all pretty well. And every once in a while, there's like a little bit in there, but he was really, really careful not to
Sure.
insert it. He wanted to just tell the stories in the Strand magazine so that the readers would keep buying the stories through the magazine every
Sure.
week.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
which is
Didn't want to
understandable.
commit artist suicide per se
Exactly.
by
Yeah.
falling on that sword.
It
So
gave new meaning to the phrase politically correct.
well,
Or
that's
perhaps
for sure.
old meaning, I guess. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's so crazy, and I think we just keep on using the term like ahead of their time. And it just,
Mhm.
um, and it's so interesting, like, because people, even now, they use that term like for folks, you're ahead of your time. It's like,
Mhm.
well, when the hell is the right time, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There was
They
people
never tell you
before
that,
me
do they?
doing this. There's people now. It's like, really? It's like, let's get with the program. Let's get with the program.
Well,
So,
especially in light of what we know about the nature of time at this point in the development of, spiritualism and energy understanding and interconnection and so forth,
right.
because we've been now able to tie it into the theories of quantum physics. And quantum
Right.
physics basically teaches us how warped time really is, and ultimately how it has little or no meaning.
Right.
And so now we actually have an understanding that says, well, time is just an illusion, and reality is divinely indifferent to this whole concept of time. So that's
Right.
how it is that you can have these synchronicities that appear at the most wacky times, because there is no time. It's just an illusion.
It's just a free for all. It's like, so is it a free for all? Do you get
Yeah.
it's like, how do and it isn't it interesting when somebody says that, Walt, like there is no time. So then I'll call the 3D mind, right?
Okay.
The trying to conceptualize that, put it in terms that we can understand, like almost saying, okay, so is there mile markers? Is there, it's like, no, there's none of that. It just exists.
Mhm.
It's not yesterday, it's not today or tomorrow. It just is. It's like, what? It's like, it's always, it just exists.
But we are starting to get, I guess you could call them mileage markers in a sense,
Sure.
through science.
Yeah.
I mean, science for quite some time has been able to replicate the experiment where you have two different controlled environments, and you have event A happen in the first laboratory, so to speak, and it occurs simultaneously at the second laboratory, 150 miles away. And they've been able to reproduce that quite a bit. But recently, they were able to reproduce it galactically. They were able to do it through a
Really?
nearby star system. And I don't remember exactly how they were able to do it, but they were able to do something here and then notice that it was actually coming through there as well. And I don't quite know
Really?
understand how that works, because it takes light X amount of years for it to come here,
Right.
light years. So I don't quite get how they measure that, but they were able to prove it to the satisfaction of scientists that you could actually do simultaneity.
That is
Like,
so cool.
whoa.
Right? It's like,
So you want some evidence that there is no time? I think there's some evidence right there.
well, the cool thing is as science catches up, um, starting to prove, I guess, on the logical aspect, uh, just like you shared, so, things such as that, as far as, or perception of time and other things, frequency and matter and all this great stuff that has been talked about for decades. And now it's just saying, here's quantifiable facts and figures, to show you that that really is the case. It's not just some mumbo jumbo.
Oh, really? Yeah. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
there's two lines from an old movie that we all know, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Mm.
And the two lines in the movie, I think, really summarize what we're talking about. This is where they're on the top of that flat mountain. I can't remember what it's called. And
Devil's Tower,
the
right?
Devil's Tower,
Yeah.
yeah. And the ships are starting to come in. I think one of them's actually landed, and these two scientists are there. And one of them says to the other, Einstein was right. And the other one says, Einstein was probably one of them.
Right?
That pretty much summarizes it, I
Right.
think.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's an understatement there for sure.
So let's get back to what we were talking about a little bit on Friday, because you had the experience of bringing in your psychic abilities and combining them with
Mhm.
Rita's and with Linda's. And it was quite the psychic session. I was loving the way you guys were kind of tag teaming
Oh,
it.
I had so much fun. Those ladies are so much fun. Such great energy.
Oh, yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just
Linda and Rita are fabulous. I love them.
yes, awesome.
But let's go. What I'm trying to kind of segue into is the psychic thing that you got going, that you
Yeah.
discovered about 3 years before you left the military.
Yep.
And
That's
you kind of outlined, you were going through, well, okay, what am I going to do with this thing? I don't know what I'm going to do with this.
right.
And you ultimately came to decisions about that. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that part of the story. What happened
Yeah.
after you decided what you were going to do?
Oh man, it was like I fell down the rabbit hole, right? Somebody came out, little green gremlin came out and beat me with a bat. No, that's what it feels like sometimes. No, after I really embraced Walt, after I embraced, I was like, I guess I am a medium, and you know, my mission is really what it's always been, because that's a reason that I've joined the military, is to not only be a part of something bigger than myself, but to really help other people. That's really what it's all about. And at least for me. And so I was like, that's my new mission statement. And if I can help just one individual, it'll make it all worth it. And so I was like, okay, well, what does that look like? And so I started dipping my toes, so to speak, into the professional aspect of being a psychic medium. And, I took a class in mediumship because I had to understand, because in the early days, my abilities were on again, off again, meaning sometimes it was like drinking from a fire hydrant, quite literally, with all the information. I couldn't speak fast enough. I was getting so much. And then it was like, boom, it was dried up. And I was like, I was frustrated. And
There
so I
was an
needed,
on-off switch, and you didn't know where the on-off switch was.
right. And I didn't know if there was, is it
Yeah.
me, and so I was like, I need to learn more about this. I need to, set some boundaries around everything and learn the ins and outs. And so I found an ethical teacher. I did my research, and it was like the universe really presented. It was cool. It was universe really just said, here you go. It was a guy. There's a lot of great teachers out there, but in this instance, it was a guy, and said, here you go. And so I took a class in mediumship. And then really after that, I took a year and just tried to figure, practice my craft, if you will. And I didn't charge anything.
Just
I
trying it
was
out,
like,
just seeing if you could do it.
yeah. And I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing with this. And then I was like, and of course, my wife, it was interesting as I started getting closer. We're right before retirement, and my wife goes, when are you going to start charging? And I remember this still very vividly. I got mad at her because I still felt that I was very much, in a sense, the apprentice. I felt like, how am I going to, I used the analogy of a plumber. I said, how am I going to charge like a plumber when I'm still the apprentice? And, and I was all, and she was like, well, it's all about energy, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, but I'm still getting the feedback from the clients as far as my learning. That's my energy exchange. And once I got over the aspect of asking for money, because I had a big personal hang up with that,
Sure.
about asking for a price, it was funny because people just before I even asked, people started offering me money.
Right.
Here's, and I was like, and it was so crazy. I look back at it and I laugh at myself because people were literally, a couple friends threw money at me, said, here, take your damn money. Don't give me anything. And I was like, and I was going, no, I'm not doing this for money. This is free. And they were like, would you take them? Almost getting in an argument. And I was like, the universe is going, what, you idiot, would you be open to receive? You're denying them the ability to give. And
look, it's one thing to wake up, but you got to wake up. Come on.
Right. And so when I got over myself, quite honestly, and the fact of you're providing a service and they are wanting to pay, then it was like I came up with a amount and started charging. And then so I started doing it in a business.
By the way, one of our regular listeners is putting stuff in the live stream. He says, "I'm loving this information. It's helping me in the time that I'm in," and that's because he provides one-to-one personal service.
Oh yeah,
helping with people with healing. So he's eating this up.
Oh, awesome. Well, I trust that the universe is leading us in the right direction with conversation, right? But what I have found personally, in looking back, this is hindsight. When any time that I had a conflict with myself or issues with myself about charging money for my service or product or whatever, or raising my rates, it's all, what I found personally, it's more about finding value with me.
Yes.
It was my value. It wasn't about Dean's reading, what Johnny Q will pay for reading. It was what Dean McMurray believes Dean McMurray's worth, because that you're damn right. A reading with Dean McMurray is worth XYZ. Then I had zero problems telling a client that my readings cost. And when I first started seeing clients, actually, we're in my office now. There's another, but when they used to come to my home for readings, I used to dance around the part when it came to money because it was always awkward. How do you ask him in the front? Do you ask him in, do I feel needy asking, okay, it's so much money for whatever, and it's like, it's almost like the universe saying, get over it. If you go and buy donuts or hire an electrician, they will send you a bill or you got to pay right then.
Yeah.
And there's no dancing around it. There's the price.
That's right.
So whether you've already come to the realization that maybe you're exchanging services or products for doing what you're getting, and you can do the barter system. I've done that for great friends that are masseuses, and they're like, hey,
there you go.
And I was like, hell yeah, I'm all about
Sure.
a massage. But the thing is that regardless of what you agree to, the biggest thing at the end of the day, as long as it's an equal energy exchange. And when it came to, again, I will reiterate, when I had issues, when it came to price or raising my price, it all boiled down to me. It had nothing to do about anybody else. It really had nothing to do about my readings. It was all about what I felt I was worth. And when I was able to take the quintessential Sharpie marker and a dry erase and rewrite how much above that price above our heads, how much we feel that we're worth, then guess what? Sky's the limit. And that's when I really was able to start manifesting, because I pulled the restraints off of what I believed in my reptilian brain of what I'm worth. And once you start increasing your worth, your product, your services become more sought after. They'll become more, they'll become richer in a sense. I'm not talking money richer, but talking about it has a deeper depth to it. One of the cool things I've noticed over the years, I was thinking like, hey, I'll discount. I've done this before, thinking, I'll give everybody a break and I'll discount something like a reading, right? I think one time it was a half-hour reading and I discounted, and it was just stupid discount. I mean, when I say stupid, it was really low. And I thought I was trying to be generous, and because I knew things were tight for folks, and I thought it's my way of giving.
Yep.
And I thought, you know what? This is a great opportunity for folks that want to get my services. And guess what? I maybe had one reading out of that. Guess why? Because they didn't see value in something that was steeply discounted.
Yeah.
Ooh, must not be worth it if he's really discounted, or it seems needy. And even though I use the verbiage, hey, I know that there's people out there struggling and everything, saying, hey, I'm trying to help folks out. And if they don't see value in it, they're not going to get it, even if they're struggling. And not saying that, you go outside their, how do I want to say, financial threshold, but at the same, and you got to determine your price for you. But at the same time, is what I have found personally is if I drop my rates way too much trying to help folks out, they don't see value in it, and I won't see a return in that. And so in reality, it's just the opposite. I help less people because less people are signing up for the services, classes, or whatever. So I picked the middle of the road and then saying, okay, well, it's discounted some, but still kind of up there, or maybe it's average, whatever the case. And then you'll see it, right? And so that was one of the big things that was eye-opening to me. It was like, really? You're getting this much for this, I'm thinking on the, but yeah, they're like,
there's a lot
no,
of truth to that. There really is.
It's crazy. And, another thing I'll share that I struggled with in the beginning, was when I started going in business and I was charging money and everything was going fine, but then comes the time in everybody's business. It's like, I've been doing this for maybe a few years or whatever the case is, and you start getting known, you're starting to develop your brand or your business. And then comes the time for a price change. And because you're trying to provide more, there's a lot of overhead and other things, and there's nothing wrong with getting paid for what you're doing. And when you start meeting or exceeding the price that your mentors or your teachers charge, and again, it goes back to what you feel that you're worth. They're saying, how can I be charging this? I've only been in business
Right.
3, 5, whatever, however long, 5 months. I don't care. It's up, and again, it was like the universe, like, God, would you get over yourself? Like, somebody's got to go, oh my God, he's back at it again. Would you give me the bottle? It's like, oh my God. But the thing is really, it was, almost those steps predominantly steps. But I would share, I think the last time, it's been a number of years since I did a big price adjustment. And one of the things, and it was a pretty substantial jump in charging. And the thing that I would share is I knew that I would lose when I did it. I made a real conscious decision. And I knew that by doing it, I would lose some customers.
Sure.
I knew it. And I was like, and I don't want to, leave anybody out. I want to be able to serve in any capacity. But the universe was like, Dean, you can't serve everybody. This is a big world. There's so many people for everybody else.
Well, plus there isn't all that much hours in the day. I mean, you're limited in terms of what you can fit. It's one of you. That's it.
There's
only
one, and I got a family, and there's other stuff going on besides, just doing mediumship stuff too. Right. And there's so many other facets that I do. And so the thing that I would share is like, okay, well, so when I made the jump, it was really interesting because it brings you into a whole different paradigm. And it's like, all right, as long as you're comfortable with that and you can hold the energy of that energy exchange, then, that's something. But, I'm still a big believer in giving back when you can. Whatever that is. So whether it's, through a conversation, whether it's introductions or just free advice or, whatever that is, but I'm still a big believer in giving back where and when you can. And it's not always financial, but of course I'm always giving tons of readings away to fundraisers and galas and and all that.
That's just part of the marketing, really.
Well, sure, and it's also
there's
a marketing aspect to that too. But then also I put it in that genre, that niche of, hey, this is also my way of giving back. Sure,
Exactly.
So I was saying, that way I'm donating my time and talents to raise some money for a great cause, and that way then. Somebody gets a reading. So
absolutely.
So
it's a good question, a good topic. For me personally, Jeffrey, by the way, was expressing his appreciation for what you were talking about. And for my own situation, I mean, I do this show just because I love it. I've never made money off of it. I want to get to the point where I can.
Sure.
And I've had lots of people suggesting things. Well, what you really should do is this, do some merchandising, or do have people, do like the public TV and ask people to become donors, or you can also charge the people who are coming on to reach your audience and all that. And none of it resonated with me. None of it resonated. What kept coming to me over and over and over again, I kept wondering, is this like me resisting? But I don't think it is. I think this is just me paying attention, I could be wrong,
Sure.
is just build the audience up. You get the audience large enough, the money's going to come in. You don't have to worry
Yep.
about it. You get the audience large enough. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It comes in through
Mhm.
advertising, maybe through a speaking appearance. I mean, it just
Yep.
comes in various different ways. So
Yep.
that's the way I've always been looking at it. And I'm getting close. I mean, right now,
That's very
on
cool.
average, about 600 to 700 listeners per episode, rather.
That's
I
very
figured my
awesome.
threshold's
That's
probably
good
going to be
news.
around 1,000 where stuff starts to happen. And of
Wow.
course, because I believe
Sure.
that, that's probably what it'll be, you know.
Sure.
But I have visions of like mega audiences,
No,
and you
that's
get into mega
awesome.
audiences, that's as you're getting into it, it just starts to, I believe it
It'll
just starts
come.
to come,
Right. Yeah.
so I certainly would like it to come sooner rather than later, but I'm happy with it coming when it comes.
Well, there's a divine timing to it too, right? It's like sometimes it can't come sooner because if it does, maybe there's missing a key element or key individual
Hmm.
that needs to open a door for you to get to those audience numbers or that, end state that you want.
Yep.
Because, you were talking earlier, Walt, about all the co-hosts throughout the years and the ones that are still with you and all that great stuff. And, you think about that on our individual lives as we go through it, whether it's maybe ex-girlfriends, whatever, relationships, friends, whatever, romantic or not. But thinking if we wouldn't have had the relationships that we had in the past, or the people that we meet,
Hmm.
or the people that we interact with, and leads us down this timeline or this path to where we are currently in our life and saying, you know what, if I wouldn't have did this, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I
True.
wouldn't be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, so trying to speed past, even though I think there's part of our mind that's like, let's go, let's get her done. It's
Yeah.
like, I
Right.
want,
Of course.
it's like, yeah, right. We want, we're trying to be proactive and get ahead of the ball and movers and shakers. But, that divine timing piece saying, hey, hang on, buddy, if you don't have this other piece, we can jump the gun. But if we don't, then we're going to be missing some key elements that, it's going to be kind of funky, in the future. It's like you don't see it yet, but down the road, maybe 3 years, you'll look back and go, oh, I see that. Like if I wouldn't have met Walt, I wouldn't have done XYZ, right?
Right.
Or,
Sure. And that stuff happens
maybe,
all the time.
for example, like the conversation, like the listener that wrote in, the conversation that we're having right in this given moment, I'm hoping makes a profound uh, change or gives profound information.
Well, he just
Something
confirmed it, actually. Not only did he give thanks, he said, I just had this conversation with my morning client. I mean,
there.
talk about
So there you
synchronicity,
go. There's validation
Yeah.
right there. So it's so cool. And you were talking about that you don't listen to your inner channeling, Walt. I mean,
No, it's not that I don't listen. I listen. I do pay attention. It's what I was trying to express is that I have longed to be able to converse like I converse with you, and to hear the words come back, or to in some way be able to grasp what's coming back that I can frame in a conversational format. I've never been able to pull that off. So like you guys, you can actually take information and you can turn it into words. You can
right.
express blocks of thought in words, and that's something I just feel very weak at. I'm getting
Well,
it better than I used to, but it's
sure.
still so scattered, compared to where I want it to be. That's what I'm
W-
trying to express.
one of the things we didn't talk about when I was on that last show was my biggest belief is that we're all psychic, we're all medium. That's my belief.
And that every
And
single psychic I've ever talked to says that. Every
well,
single
and I
one,
use the
100%.
analogy, I stole the analogy that somebody used one time talking about psychics and mediums. They used the analogy of baseball.
Hmm.
And they said, because almost every kid, almost not every kid, but almost every kid has played baseball at some level, maybe in
Or some form of
school.
it. Yeah.
Right. But here's the cool thing. So think back to elementary days, first, second grade, whatever, and
Hmm.
you're out hitting the ball, whatever, maybe a gym class. So you start there at the elementary level and you're at the entry level, but you continue on, and like, where do you want to take it? Do you play until high school?
Mhm.
Do you play through college? Do you take it to, do you go on and play in the majors? Where do you go play for the Olympics? Where do you want to take it? And
Right.
that's the same thing when it talks about, any ability, really. You could really use that analogy anywhere, but saying what's your intent? What do you want to do with it? And, if you just want to drive it on the weekends, saying, hey, that's cool too. But to, 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 to get it stronger, to make it like the second language, it's like, okay, I need to train for the Olympics, so to speak, and I need to incorporate it into everyday life. And
But how
at
do you
this,
train? That's the thing that blows my mind. I mean, if I were to sit
it's
down and say, okay, I'm going to do some training now, what do I do? I have no idea what to do.
lifting weights with psychic energy. There's a lot of different exercises, but one of them. So if you would indulge me, I could do a quick
Yeah, sure. We got a
visualization.
couple minutes left. Let's do
Okay,
it.
perfect. So if everybody would, if you're listening to this or whatever, I would invite you to sit with your feet flat on the ground and close your eyes real quick and take a nice deep breath in and let it out. And just relax just for a moment. And what I want you to do is visualize in your mind that you're sitting in a busy mall. This is pre-COVID, so no
Okay.
masks. And so if you think of all the sights and sounds, maybe a little coffee kiosk, tons of people walking around chatting. You smell all the maybe the food court, the Cinnabons, whatever, all the sight smells of a busy mall. So you're really doing a lot of people watching. And you're visualizing that you're sitting in front of a department store. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be a Penny's, it can be a Macy's, doesn't matter. And I want you to visualize yourself walking into this department store. Now, as you walk in, I want you to grab a cart. And so there's different areas of the store that I want you to pay attention to. To the left are the women's, to the right is the men's, and all the way in the back of the store is the kids. And so what I want you to do without thinking, I want you to head to that. Just allow yourself to go to a certain area of the store and start grabbing clothes off the rack. Doesn't matter if you're a man grabbing women's clothing, a woman grabbing men's, does not matter. Once you got your clothes in your cart, I want you to head to the nearest changing room. And once in there, I want you to start changing into the clothes that you have in your cart. Now, it might feel a little uncomfortable if you're changing into a different sex's clothes, but just go with me here for a minute. And as you do this, what I want you to do as you get the last garments on, I want you to take another nice deep breath in and let it out. And I want you in your mind to open your eyes and look in the full length mirror. And the individual that you're seeing at first might be you in somebody else's clothes, but then I want you to see the individual that is stepping forward to communicate with you. Notice from head to foot what kind of hair, what kind of hat, if they're wearing a hat. Are they wearing earrings? Are they wearing a necklace? What about the features of their face? Is there anything specific about their throat or their chest? And continue going all the way down, whether it's a feeling, whether it's something visual that you can see. Be aware of all your senses as you connect with them. And if they start communicating with you verbally, that's fine. Listen to that. But also pay attention to all your other senses. Do you feel something with them? Do you feel the way that they passed? Do you feel or see or smell or perhaps taste something that they used to bake or sew or a hobby? Okay. What I'd like you to do is take another nice deep breath in. Okay. Go ahead and open your eyes, return to the room. So one of the things that's just a really quick visualization, and that's a technique that I call at the mall. And basically what it is that is a technique that I teach when students are having a hard time. Remember, I mentioned earlier and early on in my development, I was like drinking from a fire hydrant and then it would dry up.
Right.
That's another way to connect to spirit and to get a visualization and also information. And then it's getting around the monkey mind, I call it, or the ego mind. And there's a lot or other real cool visualizations as well, but it's a way to start communicating. And
I get the ball
but
rolling.
those,
Okay.
yeah, so that's one technique, or that's one, I guess we want to call it exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Very cool.
Yeah. Very
Well,
cool.
thank you for spending this time. Thank you for doing this at the last minute, because you kind of
You
stepped
bet.
in graciously at the last minute.
Well,
So
thanks for thinking of me, Walt, and thank you for not only doing the show, but allowing me to jibber jab for
yeah,
go on.
it's
So
fun.
it
I mean,
is.
isn't this like really addicting? That's the way I find it.
Well, it is, and you make it so easy. The show so easy, flows so nice. So
Well, great. I'm glad. Well, we'll have to have you back another time. I'll kind of keep you in
I,
mind in case the co-host is sick or can't make it or something like that.
I always reach out. You never know what my
All
schedule
right.
looks
Sounds
like.
good.
So
So thank you very much. Thank you, live streamers. Thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
bye.